Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Samira Tilley, Marketing Manager at Assemble Systems. In today's webinar, we will look at how Gilbane Building Company is tracking and trending design data to deliver target value design. Now let's get started. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Tim Kelly, Senior Product Manager at Assemble. Go ahead, Tim.
Thanks, Samira. Appreciate the introduction. Just a really quick agenda overview. As we typically do in these webinars, we're going to go through some brief introductions of both our speakers as well as our companies. Then we're going to let Gilbane dive into the use case, and then we'll spend some time in Q&A. So with that said, I'll be weighing in a bit today. As Samira mentioned, Tim Kelly from Assemble. We are now part of Autodesk. I think you guys have probably heard that out there. But my background is a construction management degree from A&M, Texas A&M that is. Spent quite a bit of time in the industry in VDC roles, both in pre-construction and in the field, and then transitioned over to a full-time product management role within Assemble. David, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Tim. So my name is Dave Mazur. I'm a Senior VDC Manager with Gilbane, primarily working in the Mid-Atlantic Division, so Philadelphia all the way down to Richmond, Virginia, including Baltimore and Washington, D.C. The first couple of years with Gilbane, I spent a lot of time in the field understanding how VDC was impacting projects in different ways to leverage technology to benefit some of our operational workflows. And then the last couple of years, I've been focusing a little bit on pre-construction, constructability, how we can improve our estimating process and just leverage the technology more and more. So hopefully today you'll see some of how that has continued to grow within our company here.
And Dave's going to be the star of today's show and talk quite a bit about both what Gilbane is doing with the data and ultimately how that drives their productivity on projects and their risk management. But to start, I will talk a little bit about Assemble. And for those of you guys that are new, Assemble, we classify ourselves as a system of engagement. And we mean a few different things with that, but ultimately we allow for you to drill in and unlock potential from that model data, whether it's coming from interaction with the models specifically or drawings or point clouds associated. And we allow for conditioning and organization of that information however you want to see it. So if you're diving in, and Dave's going to talk a lot about quantities today, but if you're diving in and quantifying things, we allow you to classify them and ultimately aggregate that data, those quantities, for a lot of different purposes. Last bullet point there on the bottom line is connect. With being a system of engagement, we also want to connect you with the other systems that you're using across your company. In the case that you're doing data analytics like Dave's going to show today, or you're sharing information for bid process or ultimately to project management, we allow for you to connect with other systems that you're using. So you can take all of the conditioned and organized information and then share that out with your broader team. So that's basically what Assemble is. Dave, why don't you go ahead and introduce Gilbane?
So Gilbane is a rather major organization. I'm just one piece of the puzzle, but the family culture and the family atmosphere is second to none in my opinion. And then as a company, we're spending a lot of time and a lot of investment on growing upon our culture, pushing innovation, and making sure that we're using technology in the right way to add value to both our projects and to our owners. So we work across a wide array of delivery methods, anything from CM at risk to design build to integrated project delivery. I've worked on lump sum contracting, and we try to make sure that we're leveraging technology in the right way on any one of these projects. It really doesn't change how we deliver the projects. So I primarily work in the VDC group. We're up to about 35 people across the company. But we're really striving to grow the use of VDC and technology across our project engineers, our project managers, our pre-construction group in general, and our superintendents in the field. As a company, we are built around proven processes and checklists, but now we're starting to leverage the technology to improve some of those tools. A perfect example, on every job you have to look for fire smoke dampers, and anybody that's done it overlaying 2D drawings will tell you that it's very difficult to do. what we've done is integrate our constructability review process into the model, as you can see on the bottom row there, color coding the information in the model to look for fire smoke dampers across ductwork and rated walls in different locations. So our leverage of technology is about understanding and improving the efficiency of the processes that we already have in place as a company.
Yeah, and just to dive in before you get into the bulk of the content here, Gilbane, you said, as you mentioned, a sizable organization. It is, for those that aren't aware, I think like number 12 contractor in terms of revenue, so very sizable. And that said, I think you really hit on it here, but taking a broader approach, I'm looking at a dozen different things that you're enabling, and a lot of just driving technology across all sorts of process. But I'd hone in on your role, and what I think you're going to talk about a lot today is right at the bottom center of the screen, improving communication. So all of this enablement is about improving that conversation, improving the communication between the members of your team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, we've really grown our use of technology to be able to make better decisions within our project teams and with our owners about how to move the project forward, both on budget and on schedule.
Fantastic.
So a large part of what I'm going to show today is kind of our lean journey with target value design. So target value design is kind of about four things for me. It's about maximizing the value to the client and really understanding what does value mean to them. It's about balancing form and function. Is it zinc panels? Is it metal panels? Is it window wall? Is it curtain wall? Is it precast or is it natural stone? There are highly different cost per square foot on some of these different materials, but it might achieve the same value that the owner's looking for. And that's something that we need to be able to have the information and the communication to be able to make those decisions on some of our projects. Making decisions is the key to any design phase to getting the project moving forward on the right path. What we're trying to do is use the technology to take in and evaluate design data in a more efficient manner than we were before. This is our way to make sure that we have the right data, to make sure that the team understands everything that we're looking at, and really make sure that everybody's conditions of satisfaction are met as the project moves forward. So with that, I kind of want to get into a couple different examples of how we got to where we're at today. So one of the first projects I was on was a student union building, over 100,000 square feet of both addition and renovation. All three sides of the project that we were interfacing with had prior renovations done, 3 different structural systems done too. So it was a very complicated project, obviously a complex design with the custom skylight, close to 600 tons of steel. An early GMP, we were trying to get a GMP at 70% drawings, and then basically tracking from there, is it development of drawings or is it a true scope change, and making sure that we kept both the owner, us, as well as our design assist contractors all on the same page to keep the project moving forward.
The key point there is it scope development or an adjustment or change in scope, and ultimately creep of scope, and that does take a lot of both data and communication.
So when we first kind of started on this project, we knew we were going to need to go back in time to compare some different things. And as anybody knows, taking off from 2D sets of drawings is very time consuming, and you need kind of that instant analysis of the information that you're getting. This is back in 2013. I'm reading on the top of one of the drawings there. But 2013, we were basically taking the Revit models, doing takeoffs with the Revit schedules, exporting to Excel, and creating multiple deliverables review sheets to review with both our team, the design assist subcontractor, and of course the owner's team as well. Using this type of workflow, we weren't able to see what was added, what was deleted within the model. Anybody that tries to compare two versions of a Revit model without today's technology will find it's very difficult to see exactly what pieces have been added and what pieces have been deleted and how things changed. So we kind of knew we were just scratching the surface here and really wanted to expand upon the data that we were showing here and communicating. So the next project we went to, like I said, we wanted to take our lessons learned and we wanted to expand upon them. While this is a smaller project, we feel that we had a really big value add in both the model-based estimating process that we were doing as well as our pre-construction effort. Early on in this project, Gilbane made the choice that we were going to invest in both doing a 2D estimate as well as a 3D estimate, going back and forth and comparing the two of them and understanding what are the differences, why are there differences, how does Revit take off quantities versus how does an estimator take off quantities. These are very critical questions that you need to understand to have that trust in estimating and relying on the model for some of the quantities that you're getting out of it. On this project alone, we received 8 sets of drawings and over 20 different versions of all the models. On this project, there's 20 versions of the models. We had a separate model for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, a structure model, an architecture model, and a food service model. So easily at 20 different versions, that's 20 different versions times 6, that's 120 different versions of the model to upload and download and communicate change. This was when we first got introduced to Assemble, and we're really excited about being able to understand that change.
Yeah, and just to dive in here too, before you get here in that change management process, I would say a key thing to note is that you wouldn't see that evolution outside of getting into the model. You wouldn't get that many check sets if you were issuing just strictly 2D documents. So you guys are really interacting with the design team more frequently because you're able to dive into this data. I'll let you dig into exactly what you wanted to say, but I wanted to clarify that you're able to update and review information much more frequently.
Yeah, I mean, between the sets of models that we were getting and the sets of drawings we were getting over twice the amount of data by exchanging models rather than just waiting until we got a set of drawings. It's much easier for the design team to translate models to different stakeholders of the project rather than stopping and printing a set of drawings on a weekly basis. And using a program like Assemble allows you to dive in and really interrogate and understand both what the design team has been working on as well as where the scope of the project is headed and how the scope is developing in line with the target value budget. Like I said earlier, we were doing both a 2D and 3D estimate review process, and we wanted to be able to kind of compare. So first we were making these 3D estimate review sheets out of Revit with different quantities to review side by side against on-screen takeoff. It was something that our estimating team was very familiar with. They could understand what they were looking at. It was a drawing. It was something they could kind of touch and feel rather than having to go sit with a VDC engineer to review the model and trusting what they were given. They could still kind of have that trust that the quantities on the sheet were actually coming from the drawings and vice versa. So Assemble kind of went a step further from that very labor-intensive process of making those sheets in Revit. Assemble really allowed us to provide quick, user-friendly analysis of the model to any one of the people on our team. Our estimators are able to use this program on their computer. It's lightweight, it's fast. They don't have to have a VDC computer, and it really puts the data into the hands of the people that are making decisions on the project to make sure that we're in line with that target value budget, as well as keeping the value add to the owner on the front of our minds.
Yeah, and jumping in here on your estimate review sheets, that is a fantastic process to dive into, but like you mentioned, very labor intensive. And I'm sure you don't know, but I'd be curious to know the time difference of getting a view like that versus a comparable thing in Assemble, and certainly the interaction or engagement you get from your estimating team. And feel free to skip over that because I don't know if you have any statistics, but
I don't have the return on investment calculated, but I will say the color by property in Assemble has definitely saved us time. We kind of developed a template of things that we know we're going to get from the model, and they're just preset views that when we get a new model from a design team for a new project, we can just kind of link in these views and double check them to make sure we're not missing anything for certain critical drivers of the cost on different projects. After we got Assemble and we started to get this amount of data that we didn't have before in the sets of drawings, we really saw that there is a ton of data both in the information that you're getting as well as data in the model. I said it before, the design phase in pre-construction is all about making decisions and driving for decisions to keep the project moving forward in the right budget and in the right schedule. So what we started to do was meet with some of our internal teams, our project executives, our project managers, our project engineers, our superintendents, our estimating teams, our schedulers, and understand really what is the data that you need to make decisions in pre-construction. What are you looking for to inform the different deliverables that we have during the design phase? And we started to pencil out some templates for different drivers of the project. You can see this one is structural steel, and I was just kind of scribbling down the different things that we knew we needed to get out of the model or wanted to be able to communicate to our owners, and then where was it coming from? Was it coming from the model? Was it coming from pre-construction? Was it coming from an estimate? What are the different pieces of data that we were able to get? And then on the right side, you can see that we took those pencil sketches and started to convert them into Excel templates that we were able to print on 11 by 17s, hand out to our project stakeholders, and make sure that we were reviewing the right information together as a team. This was a huge undertaking for us, but has really put us in a position to review some of the critical cost drivers on projects up front and early with both the design teams and the owners.
I'll say penciling this out, what you guys did to say, okay, what are we looking to get out of it? Creating that wireframe of a dashboard that you wanted to achieve, I think is a critical step. And just to note, there are folks at Assemble that can help with that. That will help you organize your thoughts in kind of this format, just to understand where this data would be coming from, how you want to organize it, the conditioning that needs to take place, and understanding the information you want is key, because there's so much data here that you can review and organize. Knowing the output that you need is exactly what you want your team to be weighing in on.
This slide kind of focuses in on the structural steel example that we were looking at. And you can kind of see that we broke it down in the different buckets of information that we wanted to have across our project teams. On any one of these projects for structural steel, we know how many tons are in the current model, how many pieces are in the current model, what is the breakup of tons across each level of the project. And then on every single project, you need to communicate our structural steel estimate to the owner in one way, as well as the bids that you're getting in from contractors are always in a different way. The model really allows you to take that data and organize it however you want, so you can review against the information that you're getting in. Subcontractors may split it up between framing and columns. They may split it up between HSS and wide flange. They may split it up between wide flange over 50 pounds per linear foot, over 100 pounds per linear foot. Different shapes that they split it up, but Assemble and the model really allow you to take that information and understand exactly what you need to compare to. And then something we're always benchmarking against is with structural steel is what is the pounds per gross square foot on this project? What was in the specifications? What are we currently at now? What is the delta there? How are we benchmarking against the conceptual steel estimate against what's actually in the model at this current time? And this really allows you to do that on a biweekly basis, on a monthly basis, however often the design team wants to kind of share that information. It's important to note that not everything is going to be in the model, so you really need to understand with your estimating team both the progression of the design, what the design team has yet to put in the model versus what is just never going to be in the model. That takes time to understand that, but is critical to making sure that everybody understands what this sheet is actually telling them.
Yeah, and weighing in here, just to call out, you have a notes space where you're specifying that miss metals aren't included in this case, basically.
Yeah.
I would also say it's great to have a conversation with your structural engineer where they'll give you the load requirements and what they're calculating against essentially their own internal pounds per gross square foot based on those load requirements. And so having that conversation is certainly a great check against what detailing they've done in the model to date versus what's yet to be done. And you can certainly see that in the, in my opinion, in this jump from right around that 100% CD mark, you're going to see them really hone in on exactly what's included. And so it's great to always have that check number against what's the anticipation and knowing that you're going to be driving towards that and reducing maybe a percent of contingency or total percentage you're adding in based on what's not yet in the model. And also just to weigh in one more component, I saw a question come in about how frequently this is being updated and is it real time, and you hit on it. It's however frequently you can get that conversation going with the design team, and in most cases that is a biweekly type of an approach where this particular report would be updated every other week.
Yeah, I mean, definitely most design teams have some sort of exchange within the design team already. What we're doing is simply asking to be copied on that alert from Newforma or wherever to download the latest model from the design team. That way we can kind of look in on the process and really understand what's going on. And Tim, you hit on a good point there. The jump in the tonnage on the left side versus the jump in piece count on the right side. The piece count on the right side of the screen basically doubled, went from 386 pieces to 637, but yet the tonnage on the left side basically only increased by, looks like 8 to 12 tons, which isn't a lot of tonnage for the piece count that was there. And on this project, I know that they basically added a HSS tube screen wall around the mechanical equipment on the roof of this project that wasn't originally part of the project, so we were able to kind of quickly see that in the model. You'll see that towards the end of that graph, we got 4 models within 2 weeks, I think it is, and really understand what's the scope effect of that change. How do we get the owner's vision of hiding the mechanical equipment on the roof, but also not really hit the project for as big a change as it might appear there. So that exchange of the model really allowed us to have that intelligent conversation.
Yeah, and when you're back to the frequency, when you're digesting this kind of information at the more frequent basis of whether it be weekly or biweekly, it's so much less to consume than when you wait until some check set or a major set is issued in terms of that budget update. But when you're not doing this process and you wait for those updates to occur, there's so much to consume in a very short period of time that you may not necessarily have an opportunity to have that discussion to reduce, hey, this is the intent, and maybe we can make a change to address that total cost.
So the next kind of example here, and this is again from the same smaller project. So I kind of wanted to point out that this type of process doesn't have to be just used on a big project. This was a 30,000 square foot student union building for $15 million. So the example that's on the screen here, we basically were working with the design team up front, exchanging models with them and understanding how the design was progressing. And you see that the cubic yardage of concrete was basically climbing from day one. And in those first 4 models, we were able to understand, like, things are heading in the wrong direction. This is not in line with the budget. We need to kind of stop the process, have a conversation, and understand why this is happening and how it's affecting the budget. So around that August 2015 date, we met with the design team. We had a conversation. We wanted to understand what assumptions they were making in the design of the foundation walls. The design team went under the assumption for the foundation walls that in this rectangular shaped building, basically the structural steel was not going to be up before we stripped the forms on the foundation walls, and then we're backfilling the foundation walls. If you backfill the foundation walls before the structural steel's up that supports the brace frame, then the foundation walls need to be designed as retaining walls, thus adding both cubic yardage of concrete, additional rebar, etc. By having that conversation, we were able to be on the same page that we wouldn't backfill the foundation walls until structural steel was up. The walls could act as a brace frame with the structural steel, thus reducing the amount of cubic yardage in the project and thus saving the owner over $200,000 on a $1 million concrete package. So that's a huge value add, a huge benefit to this project that really allows the owner to spend that money in a place that they would rather than just concrete for foundation walls.
Yeah, and back to the top of the call, talking about the importance of both the data readily available and that communication happening have to take place. So you're talking means and methods. You're able to dissect the model a certain way to get quantities driving that conversation and then feeding back into that cycle or that loop. And you're ultimately, you're having that conversation because you're discussing or you're interacting more dynamically with that information as you move through.
Yeah. So the next one here, you'll start to see, so over the last year, or over the last 6 months even, I've spent a lot of time kind of taking our Excel templates that we've had and pushing them to Power BI templates. I'll definitely thank Assemble for the support in getting started. I had never used Power BI as of 6 months ago, and look where I'm at now. So it can be fairly user-friendly. It does take a little bit of time to get used to it, but I'm really happy with where we're at and what we have now.
Before you do dive in, we kind of skipped over it, but for those that aren't aware, Power BI is a Microsoft tool that is essentially built for consuming a lot of data and creating dashboards and reports that are dynamic. It is something that has both a desktop tool to go create your dashboards as well as a web component that you can share information out across the team, where rather than sending out an Excel file with a bunch of sheets that have graphs on them, it is a tool that allows for interaction across a broader team of users. So it's Microsoft Power BI if you guys are interested, and certainly the Assemble team can help with this setup.
So if you look at this screen, you can see that there are a lot of different projects with a lot of different sets of data across them. And that was one thing that was really important to us, was being able to take this initiative and the templates that we were creating and really scale it up across different projects so we could really look at data across all of our projects, small or big, in the same type of manner, and make sure that we had the data in the design phase to really drive for decisions. We're still certainly developing more, but these have really enabled us to look at changes across our project and really start to communicate with the design teams and our owners about the projects we're working on.
We're going to dive into a live demo. So let me go ahead and change the presenter to Dave.
Okay, so what we have here is the same type of structural steel summary sheet that we've developed, and then on the bottom right is an overlap of the total tonnage of steel at any model that we've got, as well as the total piece count of steel over any model that we've got. For this type of sheet, we started to do a couple different breakdowns of the data. At the top left, we wanted to really focus in on HSS steel and understand the different breakdown of pieces that we had across the project. We still have the breakdown of current tons by level across the project. So if we really wanted to look in and focus on the true major areas of structural steel, we can see that basically level 2 and the rooftop steel over the main portion of the project is where our significant tonnage is, and we can focus in on how do we increase the efficiency of the structural design there to make sure we hit the budget, and then as well a miscellaneous steel focus on different pieces of angle, different pieces of channel across the project, and where do our tonnages really lie. So as Tim mentioned before, what really makes this sheet powerful is it's interactive data that you can interact with on a website. You can see that this is basically just Google Chrome. I published this morning, and if I wanted to look at just HSS steel across the course of the project, I can kind of click different pieces of this pie chart to understand basically the overall tonnage on the right, the overall piece count, and then the top 3 graphs are always current data for us. We want to know the current split. So it basically only highlights that and eliminates the current tons by level. The current tons by level will just show the HSS tons. So it's here again, it's live data any way that you want to look at it. So another kind of use case on why this is important, that it's live data and every single data point that you've gotten. So this project, we've received close to 20 different structural steel models or structural models from the design team. And there's always going to be some sort of data population period. You don't know whether it's going to be the first 10 models, the first 5 models, whatever it is, but I'm able to basically go in, understand that I really want to only look at every version after after level 5, and I can see that if I take the version number there and isolate just version 6 through 20, I can see that my tonnage has been relatively the same. There's a small jump between 12 and 13, but the piece count is what really jumps. So this is where the use of Power BI and the use of Assemble really allows you to understand what is changing on the projects and dive in and understand where it's changing. So for now, I know that there's a change between version 12 and 13. I can go into project variants and basically ask to compare the structural model between versions 12 and 13, and it will instantly start to break down by Revit family exactly what has changed by how much, quantity-wise and count-wise and cost-wise. Now for this project right now, we just have a blanket $3,800 a ton for structural steel, but you can really see that between that piece count of HSS, a little bit of wide flange, and 195 pieces of angle, we should be expecting approximately $150,000 change. That is much faster data interrogation than getting a set of drawings every 2 weeks and really diving in and understanding how that developed. And then, of course, with Assemble, you can go back. I already did it here, but you can compare versions 13 and 12 and really understand where in location this change is happening for the project. That is really, really, really powerful information to have both with our project teams as well as design teams, owners, really understand what is driving changes on the project. I know that the base around this building, the angle support was basically added to support precast around the exterior facade. But if that facade went from metal panels to precast, you're able to kind of instantly understand how and why that scope changed and what are the effects of it.
And a quick note here in data that you're pushing over to Power BI. These are both, you're heavily leveraging properties or information coming directly out of the model. Just to note that with the Assemble properties, I think you mentioned it a little bit ago, but with those Assemble properties, you can further refine how that is broken down and how things are organized. And in this case, I think you're about to talk about that just a little bit.
Yeah, so this is something we're really starting more and more to dive into is really adding Gilbane information to the model within Assemble, and then allowing it to track, have we assigned everything that's in the model to a bid package? Do we have unit costs assigned to certain things? I went in and applied $3,800 per ton for every piece of structural steel, so instantly some of that increased. So it, like Tim said, it really allows you to interrogate and communicate any type of information that you want to understand. Something that we're looking into is how can we track productivity and installation status from the field with Assemble and the field app and this use of Power BI. So we're really starting to leverage that data connection and this interactiveness with Power BI beyond traditional estimating workflows. You can kind of see on the bottom of the screen here, and these are just some of the different examples that I have for today, but we've got ones for structural steel, certainly concrete. We've got ductwork by system, by size. Now, we haven't gone back in and added whether it's medium pressure or low pressure for supply ductwork, but it still gives you an idea of total linear foot, total square footage of ductwork that's in the model and how much more they might have to develop through the course of the project. Mechanical piping the same way. We can look at the entire set of mechanical piping, or we can break it down by system and really understand by system the overall breakdown of size of piping that we have from 12-inch to 10-inch, 6-inch, and really use the same type of graphical analysis to understand chilled water piping at 6-inch, how much has it gone up through the course of the project? Are they really focusing on adding the mains first in the course of the project and then adding branch piping later on, or do they still have a lot of work to do populating some of that main distribution of piping? That's really important to understand the progression of the design and this type of data analysis really allows you to do that.
Yeah, and I think the great point about Power BI in this case, and really any reporting system like this, but you can take all of those components that are specific to, let's say, your mechanical piping or mechanical overall, and start to, as you guys use this more and more, understand risk factors and have those percolate up to a dashboard, and then have all of these sheets as subsets of that dashboard where it becomes interactive, where you drill in from those different components and dive in to look at this sort of information at a detail level, and then jump back out and roll up to what's the project risk, or where do I want to go interrogate further. And so that interaction is fantastic in the sense that you can templatize it. So as you start doing this across projects, and as Gilbane is basically doing more and more of, Dave's kind of illustrating that as they've dive into this more, it makes it really easy to organize your thoughts, share that information out, and then build upon that. And so I think just before we kind of wrap up in summary, I think as a tool set, Assemble here is really allowing you to feed and organize the data. We're leveraging a lot of capability within Power BI, but ultimately it's the knowledge base and that conversation that happens from Dave or from the broader Gilbane team that drive this. And it goes back to that wireframing and discussion of what's the information that's important to us on this project? How do I have the means and methods conversation? How do I have that, labor cost versus material cost in a sense of structural steel, and we're looking at tonnage and piece count. How do I create those views that are important for our team? And that's what's great about this flexibility here, is that you can organize this based on your business workflow. And whether you're doing self-perform work or subbing it out, you can really drive some of those conversations a little bit different depending on what that is.
It's been a long road for us, but I'm really happy with where we're at. And it really starts with having some of those conversations and getting everybody to sit down and really understanding what is the data that you need to drive decisions through the course of the project. Certainly this exercise focused on pre-construction and design phase, but we're really trying to look at how we can leverage data in the model, in the schedules, in different things through this same type of interface using Assemble and Power BI to communicate information with our teams and make sure that we're really driving for the right decisions and keeping the project moving forward and providing value through the course of the project. So
I'll just add one more comment to what you just said there. In that evolution, it's more information isn't always better information. Refining this process and providing the right insights is I think, what's key. And having that information organized, like I said a moment ago, how your team does business is the key part of this. You can have a ton of information inside of Assemble or inside any other, whether it be Revit directly or something else, and if you can't aggregate that, roll it up just the way that helps drive discussion, then certainly it's what's the use of that data is what you need to drive. And I will say I've been on personally, I did a lot of this prior to joining Assemble myself, and Path was probably in nature the same period of time, but I know that with a number of our customers, how they're engaging today, it isn't a 5-year journey. It's not necessarily needing to start back at an Excel dashboard and get to this interaction between Assemble and Power BI. You can start to expedite that and learn from both what Gilbane has done, what Dave has shown today, as well as others, and certainly leverage the Assemble team to get there. I do want to sincerely thank Dave and Gilbane for taking the time to both put together this content to share today, as well as sharing that 5-year journey that they've had. That's certainly a lot of company history in there, and a lot of discussions I'm sure Dave and team have had about getting it to this point, and we really appreciate you sharing, and for those on the call, appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you both for having me here, and thank everyone for signing in and listening, and hopefully some people saw some things that they're going to try, and it sounds like a lot of people are interested in getting Power BI, so that's good to hear. That means I'm doing the right thing.